Hey CodeCrew, in the last SwiftUI RevenueCat video, I showed you how easy it is to let users make purchases in your app. Well, in this lesson, I want to show you it's just as simple to offer in-app subscriptions. RevenueCat makes integration and analytics a cinch. But before we dive into that, let me ask you a quick question. Have you tried to integrate in-app purchases to your app before, or is this going to be your first time? Let me know by leaving a quick comment below, and on your way down there, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps, so thank you. Alright, now let's take a look at how we're going to do this. Because we've done some of the work already in the previous lesson, this is going to be pretty simple. It's only going to take 3 steps. Number 1, we have to create the subscription product inside App Store Connect. Number 2, we have to add this subscription product to our RevenueCat account. And number 3, we just have to add a couple of code snippets to our Xcode project to pull down the subscription info and then to process the transaction. Now, just in case you missed the last video where we created our app inside App Store Connect and signed up for our RevenueCat account and added the RevenueCat SDK into our Xcode project, don't worry, you can still go through this video. However, I will provide a link on screen and below in the description if you want to check out that previous video and watch me do those things in detail. All right, with that said, let's go into step 1, creating the subscription product inside App Store Connect. Alright, so here I'm in my App Store Connect account, and in the previous lesson we had created an app listing for our demo, and we had gone down to the manage portion of in-app purchases and added a couple of one-time purchases. This time we're going to add an in-app subscription. So let's go ahead and click this little plus icon and choose auto-renewable subscription. This is the most common type of subscription I think that you'll find, and it's the one we're used to, you know, with Netflix and Spotify and all of that. Here we're going to add a reference name and a product ID. Before we do this, I do want to mention that RevenueCat has an amazing piece of documentation to guide you through this process with a lot of best practices. Now, to save you some time, I'll highlight those best practices as we do it together here, but I do still think this is worth a read if you're going through it for the first time. So I'll make sure I put this link in the description below the video. Alright, so the reference name is just your internal name for your reports. So here I'm going to put CommMind, this is all access monthly. And for the product ID, now this one's pretty important because these product IDs identify your in-app purchase across your entire account, across all of your apps. And even when you remove this app, that product ID that you've used before is now taken up and you can't repeat it. And so it really helps to have an organized system for your product IDs. The system that RevenueCat recommends is to have your app name or maybe some sort of SKU or app ID. So I'm just going to put CM followed by underscore followed by the price of this subscription. So I'm going to make this, let's make this $14.99, followed by underscore, followed by the duration of the subscription. So this would be 1 month. And following that, if you had any sort of trial or introductory period, you could put another underscore and then the duration, maybe 1 week, and the price of that. So maybe like 99 cents or something like that. But for this one, I'm not going to have that, so I'm just going to leave it as this product ID. Let's click next. The next thing to do is to add it to a subscription group. So as you can see here, I already had created a subscription group during my testing, but I'm going to create a new one to show you what that is. Now, a subscription group is exactly like it sounds. It groups together different subscription products that unlock the same level of access. So the best example would be if you had, let's say, a monthly and a yearly subscription. So 2 different durations, but they unlock the same tier or same level of access. You could put them into the same subscription group. Again, this is a reference name, so this is internal. Later on, we're going to have to configure a public facing name. So for this internal name, I'm just going to call it CommMind All Access because I've already used Pro Access. So let's go ahead and create that. And then we're going to get to configuring our subscription. Now there are only a couple of pieces of information. So number 1 is the duration. So this one is the monthly. Let's go ahead and choose 1 month. And let's set some pricing. Actually, let's hit save first because these are treated as independent steps and it's going to prompt you to save anyways. So I'm going to choose my currency and I'm going to choose $14.99. Does that exist? Yes. All right, let's click next. And here it's going to convert that currency and tell you what the equivalent would be for the different countries and regions. Now you can adjust the pricing as you wish for each of these places. I'm just going to go with the flow here. Just click create. All right. You have to save again, otherwise it's going to prompt you to. And then I'm going to click back and we're going to add localization. So here you can sort of set the text and what gets displayed depending on the different regions and countries. And this is what the user is going to see. This is what's going to show up for your subscription name. And this is going to be the description for that. Now you might be tempted here to put something like, you know, all access monthly $14.99 and put all of this information in here. But actually all of that becomes redundant when it gets combined with the app name, the subscription group name, and all of that. So you really need to know the context of how this subscription name is going to be displayed. We just checked the documentation real quick because I found this image so useful in the documentation. When the user goes to modify their subscription or check the status of it, this is how they're going to see the information. So you have app name, then you have the group name, and then you have the subscription name, and then you have price and duration. And then down below under options, and it's sort of cut off here, you can see that it's going to be the subscription name, followed by brackets, and then the duration in there, and then the price. And I assume that you would be able to switch to a different subscription in the same group right below it. So if you had like the yearly access, you would see that there. That's why you can see in the subscription display name, it's redundant to also put the duration and the price. Definitely bad idea to put the price because that's different for every single user. So you don't want to embed the price in the name. You can see from this example that their group name is Ocean Journal subscription and their subscription name is all access. There's no mention of duration or price. So I'm going to follow the same practice here. And I'm going to put all access. And then I'm going to say unlocks all content. Now, if I had a yearly subscription product, I would put the same thing here, right? In fact, that's one of their tips that they recommend here. If you read it, I'm not going to read it out to you, but it basically says for all of the subscriptions in the same group, just have the same name, because that way under options here, it's going to say all access and then the duration. And then underneath it's going to say all access and then like your yearly or, you know, another duration. All right, so let's go back here. Let's save this. And then before we can test this, we have to submit some or add some review information because we're not actually submitting this for review yet. But one of the things we have to add is a screenshot. And I'm going to put a placeholder image here. I created this in the previous lesson, so you can check that out if you missed that for some reason. So here's the placeholder screenshot. I'm going to hit save. And it's still going to say missing metadata, but it says you must add, yeah. So what we're missing is if you go into subscription groups, remember how we created that all access subscription group, this one right here? We only specified an internal reference name. We haven't specified yet a public facing name. So let's go ahead and click this and add. Okay, so this is the public facing subscription group name. Let's go back here and check out what that is. So again, the first piece of information is app name and then the group name and then the subscription name. So for the group name, they put Ocean Journal subscription, and then below that for the actual subscription is all access. So I am going to put here Calm Mind subscription. And then for the app name display option, I'm going to use a custom name rather than specifying the app name, because a lot of the times when you do App Store optimization, you're going to be cramming some keywords and things that you want to rank for in the app name. So obviously that's not stuff that you would want in this screen here when the user is looking at the subscription. So I'm going to use a custom name and just simply put what the app name is intended to be. Let's hit save. Okay, now this subscription group is ready to submit. I think that might have been the actual subscription though. And then down here, our subscription right here still says missing metadata, but sometimes it hasn't picked up yet. So I would simply refresh the page and just double check that it's ready to submit. All right, see, we just have to refresh the page. All right, so this is ready to submit now. Now we can add it to our RevenueCat account. So just in case you don't have your RevenueCat account yet, you can visit codewithchris.com/rcat2. That's going to bring you to this page. It's just going to let the team know that you guys are interested in more app monetization content. I don't get compensated for any account signups or anything like that. If you have your account created from the previous lesson, definitely use that to log in. Otherwise, you can try for free and create an account. You won't get charged or anything like that, and it's free to use up till $10,000 in monthly revenue. So that's quite generous. After you have your account in here, you're going to want to add app and then add your app. We've done this in the previous lesson, so let's click Combine 2. And if we go into products, you'll see that we have 2 one-time purchase products. This time, however, we're adding a subscription product. The process is the same, but we're going to have to do one more configuration, which is to add an entitlement. Before we get there, let's just add our subscription product first. Let's click New, and then let's add that identifier. So I kind of remember it from memory, but it's going to be this one right here. And that's going to be your product ID. And you can see I didn't use that for subscriptions, but for a subscription, you definitely want to do that. And select store. Let's go App Store and click Add. All right, so now we have our product. Easy. 0 entitlements. So what are entitlements? Well, it's an easy way for us to check whether a user is entitled to a certain level of access. So in this case, for our meditation demo, we unlock all access. So let me create a new entitlement in this section right here. Click New, and we're going to call it All Access. Unlocks all content. So that's my ID for my entitlement. This is what I'm going to be checking in my Xcode project, in my app. So if I want to determine if a user has all access, then I'm going to make sure that any subscription that unlocks all access has that entitlement configured. So for this subscription product, let's go and add the new entitlement to it. Okay, that's not where we do it. Sorry about that. We go into entitlements, and then we're going to add products to it instead. So let's go ahead and click into here, and we're going to attach all of the products that would unlock this level of access. So let's go to attach, and let's go ahead and select our subscription. And there we go. If we had multiple subscriptions, like maybe a yearly subscription, we would also attach that here, because all of those subscription products unlock this tier, this all access tier. Now, offerings is something special as well, but we're going to talk about that in the next lesson. And that's pretty much all we have to do here. Now, before we jump into Xcode to allow users to purchase it, I do want to mention one thing, just in case this is the first video you're jumping into and you haven't set up your app yet, because you need to go into settings here and you need to add your app bundle ID as well as your iTunes Connect shared secret. This is what allows RevenueCat to go into App Store Connect here and fetch the information it needs. So you would go ahead and click this and then generate a secret key, and then you would go back to your settings and you would just add that right here. And this bundle ID is from your Xcode project. If you want to see me do this step by step, then definitely review the previous lesson in this series. All right, with that said, let's jump into our Xcode project and allow users to purchase our new subscription. All right, so here we have the Xcode project for our meditation app demo. I'm going to do a quick recap just so we're all on the same page. So first of all, we added the RevenueCat SDK to our Xcode project using CocoaPods. In the last lesson, you'll see me go through those exact steps, so feel free to revisit that if you've forgotten. And then in our entry point here, we have created an init method here, and we basically imported the purchases framework up here in line 9, and then we called the configure method, passing in our API key. Now this API key is from our RevenueCat app in the dashboard, as you can see right here. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's review how this buying process works, because purchasing the subscription is actually the same way that we purchase a one-time purchase. Just to remind you, this is the details screen for looking at a single meditation. Now this buy button here calls our view model .makePurchase and passes in the meditation that the user is looking at. So if I go into that method, you'll see that we call this other class purchase service .purchase, and we pass in the product ID for the meditation. Now this purchase service is something that we created, and this is the actual RevenueCat code. So what are we doing here? Really, it starts right here with the RevenueCat purchases framework. You import that purchases framework, and then you get the singleton instance, and then you call .products to fetch an SK product. This stands for store kit product based on a product ID. So this is actually going to fetch that information from App Store Connect, basically how you've configured that product, and it's going to pull that information down. It's going to look for that product. So after that call is made, when it returns, first of all, we check that we did find a product. And if we did, then we're going to get a reference to it from here. And then we're going to call another method in the RevenueCat purchases framework. So this is the method we call purchase product, and we simply pass in that store kit product. And we're going to get a response back with a lot of info, transaction, purchase info, error, and if the user canceled or not. And then right here, we're simply running our logic to unlock that purchase for the user inside of our app. Now that bit is going to be different for your app, simply because your logic is going to be different from my logic, but really the RevenueCat parts of this is first to fetch the SK product and then to actually process that transaction. This is exactly the same thing for a subscription. So we would pass in the product ID for the subscription instead, and then it would process that. So processing the transaction for the purchase is just one side of the equation. On the other side, we also have to check access, right? We have to check if the user has a paid subscription. Is it active, and does he or she have access to all of the content? Well, remember in RevenueCat, we had created this entitlement called all access. So when the user buys that subscription, it's going to unlock that entitlement or make it active for them. So inside of our app, we just need to check to see if they have an active all access entitlement. So the way we do that is, where should we do this ourselves? So we would do this in the meditation model in this case, and in here we can check if the user has access to a subscription or has an active subscription. So again, we would use the purchases framework from RevenueCat, and we would say purchases dot shared dot purchaser info Okay, and if I hit enter, it's going to open up this closure. So we get back two parameters when we fetch the purchaser info for the user. It's going to have this purchaser info object, and it's also going to have error. So here, let's call this purchaser, let's just call this info and call this error. So inside here, check the info parameter for active entitlements. So if info dot active subscriptions, but what we're really looking for are entitlements here. See the entitlements attached to this purchaser info, because with this one, this is searching for specific active subscriptions. So we would have to check against, okay, does he or she have an active monthly subscription, or does he or she have an active yearly subscription, or do they have this subscription and that? And you're checking against these individual product IDs. Whereas if we use RevenueCat and we're just attaching all of those subscriptions to this single entitlement, then all we need to do is just check if they have an active all access entitlement. And that makes it way easier, especially when you're introducing different pricing options and discounted offers. But all of those things unlock the same level of access. You can just add them all to this entitlement and check that. So we're going to say entitlements active. Actually, this might not be the correct method. Let me just dive back into the documentation. This is, by the way, this is really useful. They have such good documentation under subscription status here. Get purchase info. This was what I was looking at earlier. So with this purchaser info object, you can get the entitlement information. Right. So for example, here, checking if a user is subscribed, the purchaser info.entitlements, and then you can pass in the ID of your entitlement. So for us, that would be all access. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me just double check if this was a Boolean. Is active. So you got to check the extra flag there. To do, and this would be unlock all access for the user. So that's it. This is the other side of the equation. So if you're going to make a purchase for a specific subscription, all we need is the product ID here. This one right here. And then we can go ahead and use this method to look up the StoreKit product. And once we get a reference to that, we can use the purchase product method to actually process that transaction, which would then unlock the entitlement or flip it active, according to what we configure on the dashboard side. And then to check access, we would just need to get the purchaser info for the user and then check that they have an active entitlement. And then we go ahead and unlock everything for the user. Now, in terms of where you put these code snippets and what to do afterwards, like how to unlock all the content for the user, that's all going to be dependent on your own app. So it's really hard for me to show you those specific details, especially because this is just a demo app. So for the rest of this video, I will implement it for this demonstration app, but just know that if you were building your own app that you were planning to put into the App Store, you probably wouldn't do it the way that I'm doing it right now, because there's no database, there's no user directory. I'm not saving, what the user has unlocked in a database somewhere for them to, retrieve later on. This is all to demonstrate really how easy it is to process transactions and in-app purchases with the RevenueCat framework, and then also how to check if the users have active subscriptions so that you can unlock the content. Okay, so with that caveat out of the way, let's implement it for this demo app and unlock everything for the user once they have bought a subscription. So to recap how this works so far in this demonstration app, we have a dictionary that just indicates, because we do allow users to purchase single meditations. So this dictionary keeps track of which meditations the user has unlocked. The string is the meditation ID, and Boolean is just whether or not they have access to that. So in the detail view, let me resume this. This buy button only shows up when it checks that dictionary and sees that the user hasn't bought this before. With the subscription, we want to unlock everything. So I'm going to create an additional flag here and call it all access. And I'm going to initially set it to false. And basically, if the user has an active subscription, I'm just going to flip this true, and we're not going to show any buy buttons because they have access to everything. So when the user has this entitlement, I'm going to set this flag to true. Like that. And furthermore, in the detail view, I'm going to say, if the user has not purchased this meditation and they do not have all access, all access equals false, then show this button. I'm also going to add a second button here. So I'm just going to copy this. Actually, I'm going to copy this. And this button is going to be if the user doesn't have an all access subscription. I'm going to show a button that says buy subscription. And let me see if there's something wrong here. Okay. I'm not exactly sure why that's failing to build. Let me just build the project, and okay, build succeeded. So anyways, we should see a button as soon as that starts to work, but let's just process this subscription. So what are we going to do when the user taps on that buy subscription button? Well, right here, we're calling model.makePurchase and passing in that specific meditation, right? Well, I'm going to make another method here. Instead of make purchase, I am going to say, this one's going to be make subscription purchase. And seeing as how I only have one subscription right now, I'm going to perform purchase service. And for the product ID, I'm going to put it into a constants file right here. Now, in a production app, you wouldn't hard code the product ID like this. You would probably come from your database. But subscription, how about let's call it subscription product ID. Okay. So this was, this one right here. So that's what we're going to pass in, right? We're going to pass in constants dot subscription product ID. And upon successful purchase, what do we want to do? Well, all we need to do upon successful purchase, set the all access flag, right? So self.allaccess equals true. So that is going to flip the switch on this, which will then notify the UI that, hey, they just bought a subscription. So remove all the buy buttons because they have access to everything. So back in the detail view, we can call that new method, model.makeSubscriptionPurchase. And when they make that subscription purchase and that all access flag gets flipped to true, this button is not going to show, this buy subscription button is not going to show, and this button as well, buy a single meditation, this is not going to show as well. All right, so I'm going to really quickly just run this in the simulator to make sure that my buy subscription button shows up because it wasn't rendering here in the preview canvas. Okay, so indeed it's there. But tapping on these buttons doesn't do anything in the simulator. We have to plug in our actual device to actually test purchases. So That's what I've done right here. And you can see my two girls there. I really love this photo because it shows how silly they are, and it's a very dynamic pose. So I'm gonna load up my app on the phone right there, and let's take a look. Oh yeah, I downloaded TikTok recently. Haven't created any content and barely used it. I'm thinking about using it for Code with Chris because I thought it was mostly, for entertainment. But then recently I've seen content creators actually teaching and creating learning content on it. So I'm interested in exploring that. If you use TikTok or you have some ideas on how I can use TikTok to educate and to teach people coding in iOS, let me know. Share with me what sort of content do you think would fit TikTok. I'm thinking like short tips and things like that. Okay, anyways, here is the demo. All right, so I'm going to try to make a test purchase on the subscription. So tap that button and it will recognize that you are trying to test your in-app purchases. So you'll notice that it says sandbox, and this is your first time trying to test your in-app purchases. It's going to pop up a dialog asking for a username and password, and you have to put in a test account for this. So you have to create a sandbox test user in your App Store Connect. We did this in the previous lesson. If you don't remember, go into App Store Connect, click on users and access. Along the left-hand navigation, there will be like a sandbox testers near the bottom. Click into that, add a test account with an email and a password, and that's what you're going to enter here on the screen. So since for me, I've already added my sandbox tester account, I only have to enter in a password. So here you can see I'm purchasing all access for this app, and the details are there. That's not my subscription description, but yeah. So let's go ahead and try and purchase this. All right, let's hit subscribe. Okay, now let's enter in my password. Okay, sign in. All right, there we go. And give it a second. Okay, I'm all set. And how did it just lose? How did it just lose connection to that? All right, so we're back. My QuickTime recorder just cut out as soon as the action happened. We processed the test transaction, and then it popped up a little dialog that said, purchase successful, you're all set. And then I tapped on OK. And what I saw on the screen was that the two buttons disappeared. What you saw on my screen was the QuickTime crashing, but you're going to have to take my word for it. But what I do want to show you is that now that the user has purchased the subscription, if we set a breakpoint right here on the init method of our model, let's walk through checking the user's entitlements and just make sure that they have access, right? I'm just going to put breakpoints in a couple of these different places, and I am going to run the app on my phone, and then let's take a look at what happens. All right, so it's fetching the purchaser info for this user. Let me just bring up this, and we're gonna just hit continue execution, and it's gonna come down here. So let's check the info object here, and you can see that under entitlements we do have all access, expires date. You can see it actually expires quite quickly because when you're testing, all the time frames are shortened. So when you have a monthly subscription, it expires I think in like 5 minutes. If you have a yearly subscription, it expires in like half an hour or something like that. And see, is active, yes, is sandbox, yes, and all of this other metadata. So it's going to come into here and it's going to set all access flag to true, which basically will unlock everything in our app. Now again, I do want to mention that the most important takeaways from this video is how to work with the RevenueCat SDK, because the exact implementation of how to unlock stuff for the user is dependent largely on your own app, and where you put this code even is largely dependent on your own app implementation. But take away how we integrated the RevenueCat SDK, how we initialized it here with our API key, how we fetch the SK product using the product ID and then process the transaction, and finally how we were able to check if the user is entitled or has that entitlement or not. So those are the big takeaways from the video. The last thing I want to do is jump back over to our RevenueCat dashboard and just check out the purchase. So let's go back to overview. Remember to toggle this to sandbox data and take a look. Check it out. We have one active subscription here, active subscriber being me, and you can see that this was the initial subscription purchase 20 minutes ago, and it expired in 5 minutes because it's a monthly subscription, right? So that testing time frame is shortened to 5 minutes, and you can see it's already renewed like 3 times, and these indicate that these are renewals. Now, the reason why it expires in such a short time frame is so that you can test what happens during a renewal. You don't have to wait a whole 30 days for you to test if your app is functioning as expected. So that's why there's this. As you can see, offering in-app subscriptions is just as simple as offering one-time purchases. However, in the next lesson, I want to show you an even better way of presenting your products using offers. This feature allows you to configure different combinations of products to present to your users at the optimal time, based on conditions that you specify. This helps you maximize your revenue because you can be presenting offers to users that actually want them, that are relevant, versus just presenting generic offers. For example, if you notice the user is really heavily using your app and still hasn't made a purchase at the end of the week, you might have your app present to them a limited time offer with a discount just to tip the scales. In the next lesson, I'll show you how to use this. To get ready, make sure you have your free RevenueCat account. And if you don't have one yet, just go to codewithchris.com/rcat2. RevenueCat is free to use up until you're making $10,000 a month. So in my opinion, it's a great idea to use them, especially in the beginning when you don't know if your app is going to make any revenue at all. Using RevenueCat really cuts down on your development time and helps you get to launch faster. Again, the URL is codewithchris.com/rcat2. Full transparency, I don't get compensated for signups, but using that link does let the team know that you want to see more app monetization content, and they may sponsor future videos here at Code with Chris. So thank you for that, and thank you goes out to RevenueCat as well for making this video possible. All right, in the next lesson, we're going to take a look at offers. If you don't want to miss it, make sure you're subscribed and turn on bell notifications. Give this video a thumbs up too if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next lesson.